The resume slid across the table without a single glance falling upon it. Evelyn Brooks pushed it aside with 2 fingers, as though it carried a smell she did not care for. And her senior director finished the job, shoving it to the very edge of the mahogany table until it teetered there, forgotten. Across from them sat a man in a faded gray suit, his hands folded, his face calm in a way that unsettled the room more than any protest could have. 2 other candidates sat polished and gleaming beside him, already smiling the smile of men who believed the job was theirs before a single question had been asked. Nobody in that boardroom knew that the quiet man at the far end had once saved 3 companies from ruin, or that he had walked away from a 6-figure title for the sake of a 5-year-old girl who still needed her hair braided every morning. Nobody knew that in the next hour one sentence from his mouth would collapse 3 years of leadership, humble an empire, and force a room full of executives to confront the ugly truth of how quickly they had judged him. What happened over the next few hours would change both of their lives forever. Before we begin, if you believe kindness, humility, and second chances can change the world, please take a moment to like this video. Comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs inspiration today, and subscribe to the Aura Fables for more unforgettable stories. 6 years earlier, Noah Carter had been someone else entirely. In a glass office in downtown Chicago, he had carried the title of Senior Strategy Consultant, a man whose opinion was requested before executives made decisions worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He had a corner view of the skyline, a calendar packed with clients who trusted his judgment above their own, and a wife named Renee who filled their small apartment with laughter every evening he came home. Then illness had taken her quietly and cruelly, over 18 months that Noah remembered only in fragments, hospital corridors, hushed voices, and a small daughter named Maya, who was too young to understand why her mother wasn't coming home. In the wreckage of that grief, Noah had made a choice that no boardroom would ever have advised him to make. He walked away from the title, the office, the calendar full of important names, because none of it mattered more than being present for a little girl who had just lost her mother. He traded a 6-figure salary for freelance consulting work he could do from a kitchen table, work that let him be there for breakfast, for homework, for the quiet nightmares that came sometimes at 2 in the morning. The contracts had been steady at first, then had slowly dried into something thinner, something that left the bills stacking higher than his patience for waiting. When a recruiter called about an opening at Brooks Dynamics, a company built from a single manufacturing patent into a billion-dollar empire, Noah had almost said no. A 6-year gap in a resume did not inspire confidence in rooms like that one. But he said yes, because saying no meant nothing would change, and something had to change for Maya's sake. Evelyn Brooks was the woman who had built that empire, sharper than most of the men who once dismissed her, and unforgiving of anyone who did not meet her exacting standards. She needed a new chief strategy officer, because a $4 billion initiative called Meridian had been bleeding money for nearly 3 years. Every internal report blamed the market, the competition, the economy, anything but the strategy itself. 2 other finalists had been called in alongside Noah. Preston Vance arrived with the confidence of a man from an elite consulting pedigree, his vocabulary full of market frameworks and easy certainty. Derek Coleman was quieter, a man who had spent his career inside operations and turnarounds rather than boardroom theory, watching more than he spoke. When Noah walked into the building that morning, the receptionist glanced at his faded suit and asked if he was here for a delivery. He corrected her gently and rode the elevator up in silence, steadying himself the way he always did before rooms that had already decided what he was worth before he opened his mouth. The boardroom on the 40th floor was lined with windows overlooking a city that Meridian was supposed to conquer and hadn't. Evelyn crossed the room to greet Preston first, asking warmly about a recent client, then greeted Derek with a pointed question about a turnaround he'd led the year before. When she reached Noah, she offered only a brief nod before sliding his 1-page resume beneath a stack of other documents, never opening it. Richard, her senior director, pushed it further still toward the table's edge. The meeting began with a wall of red numbers projected behind Evelyn. 11 straight quarters of losses on a $4 billion bet that had once been the company's proudest achievement. Preston spoke first, unprompted, delivering a smooth, rehearsed analysis of macroeconomic headwinds and shifting consumer demand. Derek followed with a grounded case for operational restructuring, Every time Noah opened his mouth to add something, the conversation shifted before he could finish. Redirected toward the other two men by Richard or another executive, subtle enough that no one in the room seemed to notice the pattern. Then Evelyn set down her pen and asked the question that mattered most. If Meridian had a good product, real demand, and a strong team, why had it lost money for 11 quarters straight? Preston answered with confidence about competitors entering the market. Derek proposed cutting costs across 3 departments. Both answers were reasonable. Neither explained the real problem underneath. Noah had spent the entire previous night reading through a 140-page internal report, and buried on page 92, in a data table none of the internal analysts seemed to have connected to anything else in the document, he had found something that reframed the entire failure. He sat with that knowledge for a long moment, weighing the cost of speaking against the safety of staying silent in a room that had already decided he did not belong there. He thought of Maya waiting for him after school, of every company he had ever turned around by telling clients the truth they didn't want to hear. None of those turnarounds had ever started with silence. "The problem isn't outside the market," Noah said, his voice even and unhurried, cutting through the room for the first time. "The problem is inside an assumption this room has believed for 3 years. Richard let out a short, dismissive laugh. "A 1-page resume doesn't give you the standing to overturn 3 years of analysis from this entire leadership team," he said. "We've spent $40 million on outside consultants for this project." Evelyn studied Noah for a long moment. "If you believe everyone in this room has been wrong," she said, "you'll need to prove it right now. No slides, no preparation." Noah stood and pulled up the customer revenue breakdown buried in the report's appendix. The section most people had skimmed past on their way to the summary. He pointed to 2 lines on the chart. "Every projection in this report assumes growth will come from large enterprise clients," he said.
8.
"But look at where the actual revenue has come from. Nearly 70% of Meridian's income over the past 11 quarters has come from mid-sized companies, not the enterprise accounts this entire strategy was built around." A regional vice president asked whether that might just be short-term fluctuation. "If it were fluctuation, the pattern would shift quarter to quarter," Noah answered. It hasn't. It's held steady this whole time. That's not noise. That's the actual shape of the demand this product has found. Whether the strategy acknowledges it or not." Richard tried to rattle him with a barrage of questions about cost, risk, and blame, and Noah answered each one honestly, admitting plainly when the current data couldn't yet answer something. Richard seized on the admission, standing and demanding the council move on to the 2 qualified candidates in the room. Noah did not raise his voice. "I never claimed to have every answer today," he said. "What I claimed is that the assumption underneath this project is wrong, and the numbers back that up. Being honest about what I don't know isn't a weakness in this room. It's the thing nobody else has done all morning." Evelyn finally opened the resume she had dismissed that morning. Reading it slowly this time, a logistics company's costs cut by 41%. A manufacturing plant pulled back from bankruptcy, a division whose turnaround was now taught as a business case study.
Oh.
Though Noah's name had never appeared in the credit. Derek spoke up without hesitation, admitting that Noah's presentation had been more rigorous than his own. Preston said nothing, his earlier confidence visibly thinning. Evelyn rose to her feet. "If you had only one answer left to prove you're the right person for this room," she asked quietly, "what would you say?" Noah looked at her steadily. "Brooks Dynamics has to stop trying to save the company you once planned for," he said, "and start running the company you actually have." The silence that followed was absolute. One by one, the executives around the table began admitting what they had missed, forecasts that never made sense. Data quietly filed away and forgotten, months of work that had overlooked exactly what Noah had found in a single night. Evelyn set down the folder. "I looked at your suit, and I looked at your 1-page resume," she said, "and I decided you were the least important person in this room. Today, you proved you're the only one who actually understood the company I built." Evelyn named Noah Chief Strategy Officer that same afternoon, with full authority over Meridian's future.
Why wore me? Why wore a why? Afraid of on left for one to afraid of why I've died everywhere a while for the war with we while enter all and I so what I'm so way more
Noah asked that Preston and Derek stay on the project, each given real responsibility rather than dismissal, a decision that told Evelyn more about his character than any answer he'd given at the table. Within a few quarters, Meridian returned to profitability for the first time in 3 years. Within a year, it had become the fastest-growing division in the company. Evelyn overhauled the entire hiring process afterward, requiring every leadership candidate to be judged on demonstrated ability before anyone reviewed their background or the length of their resume. Months later, Noah brought Maya to the office for the first time. She noticed the same faded gray suit still hanging behind his door. "Why haven't you bought a new one?" she asked. Noah knelt down to her level. "'Cause this suit reminds me," he said, "that what someone is worth isn't decided by what people notice first. It's decided by what you prove once they finally listen. True greatness, in the end, is never measured by a title or a corner office. It is measured by character, by the quiet decisions made when no one is applauding. And every person sitting across a table from you, however ordinary they may seem, is carrying invisible battles you know nothing about."